Welcome to Pax Europiana here from Vienna. This is my explanation for the Austrian Antisemitism, and it's the best symbol here because this is the mayor of Vienna, and the mayor of Vienna before the First World War. And when you look about it, there's a huge protest here that shame, and they want to have this monument removed, and that's very good because he was very much an anti-Semitist, and he was also an anti-capitalist, and he was anti-American. And the whole thing is, when I explain you always that the original sin of Austria is anti-Semitism, and the reason why we are not in NATO is very much connected with that, and it's anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Semitism, and it's connected to the left, there's no doubt about it. I have made many discussions, but also to the center-right, to the Christian Democrats. And very much they have these original sins. They were all very clearly anti-Semitic. This is the original sin of the Austrian People's Party and the Christian social movement. Today, most of the people will not say that anymore, and they will be, everybody is now for Israel and is anti-Semitism. Obviously, we are now 2022 and a modern country, but when you talk about then should we join NATO, then you will see a lot of these statements like, America, East Coast, the traditions, and all these kind of deep-rooted sentiments of prejudices and of hatred against America, against NATO, then they will immediately, when they are on camera, they will never say it, and they will never confess it, even maybe to themselves. But when you go into the deep debate, if Austria should join NATO, then immediately all these prejudices of America controlled by the Jews, the capitalist world, the plan of America, and this kind of equidistance between the Soviet, and now today Russia, and America, then comes immediately this kind of discussion. In Ukraine, the Americans are pushing for war, and in Kosovo, the Americans, and all this anti-Americanism is always tightly connected with anti-Semitism, anti-capitalism, protectionism, and all this ideological kind of connectivity between this extreme left and extreme right is always, unfortunately, very much the fabric of the Austrian psyche and the Austrian ideological undermining of almost all parties. It's not a surprise that no single European party is today ready to endorse NATO membership. Of course, this has electoral reasons because it's only 16% of the population in favor. Of course, this has also reasons like they are afraid, of course, that this is pushing the voters towards the anti-NATO parties. I understand that argument as well. And I understand that are legitimate concerns of political party leaders. But that not a single party, not even the liberal Neos or the Greens, who are relatively transatlantic parties, but also the Austrian People's Party is not ready, and not a single leading politician, to endorse the NATO People's Petition, which 100 brave Austrians have already signed. It is very much connected, not with electoral things, but with this deep-rooted hate against America, with this deep-rooted anti-Semitic and anti-capitalist prejudices, which are inheritance of the past. This is this kind of Austrian center of the worldism, and this kind of Austrian arrogance, and this kind of we unjustified lost the First World War because of American intervention, and this kind of blaming it on the Jews, the loss of the empire, this Christian anti-Semitism, this kind of left-wing, very much, Russia is the anti-power towards the imperialist West, and all this kind of from the left, from the right, so many confused ideological kind of streamings which come together in Vienna, and they always have one common denominator: hatred for America, hatred for everything America represents, like the victory in the First World War. They always blame that on America. Then, of course, the situation in the Second World War, they always say that the Soviet Union was the key to defeat Nazism. In Austria, nobody ever has discussed the Lend-Lease and the American support for the Soviet victory, and also we have this big monument. I will go there in a second, discussing about that one. But the roots of all this is coming in the left and in the right to the Austrian monarchy, and blaming America for the defeat in World War I, but also in the very deep-seated hatred which was in the Austrian monarchy already against the Jews. Yeah? And this is still a dominant undercurrent deep down. They don't tell you when you meet somebody, they will not say it to you, they will not greet it, they will all be correct. But this hatred is still there today, and I'm very deeply ashamed. I condemn it. And the only way to really overcome it is also to integrate Austria fully into the Western Alliance. It's not an absolute way. We have also Hungary, which is the same sentiments, the same deep-rooted anti-Semitism, and also the sentiments of the loss of the First World War and the defeat of their empire, which they very much saw as their empire as well. And then you have Orban playing the drums against America very effectively. He can unite with Trump, whatever. But he is very deep-seated, anti-Semitic, anti-capitalist, and he's going with Trump and going to Texas on the CPEC, Orban I'm talking, but he is very much since 2004 already against a free trade agreement with America. So what kind of pro-Americanism is that? Yeah? He is maybe pro-Trump because he gets paid for it, or he has this kind of joint alliance with Putin. But he is certainly against a free trade agreement. He was always. He is certainly against American European Energy Union. He is certainly against, even when he is a member, but he is careful not to put too much on the line. But he is very much anti-NATO. He was anti-NATO in '99 when it came to liberation of Kosovo. He was NATO, anti-NATO. He blocked actually the access of America through Hungary towards Serbia, and he is very much anti-NATO in all meaningful concerns. He is very famous, like the Austrians, also the Hungarians are giving all the secrets to Russia, and there is a lot of intelligence cooperation between Hungary and between Russia. And it's very deeply troubling. And that's a major problem. So here we come back again that the two main parts of the constituent of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, the ruling elites, the German-speaking elite and the Hungarian-speaking elite, and their entry in their responsibility for the First World War, and their guilt and their anti-Semitism, their anti-Americanism, their kind of common ideological platform of hate against minorities has led to the First World War. And then, of course, they blame America for losing it. And then we were very lucky in the 90s that Hungary was invited to NATO, and there was a different Hungary, a different political elite. But in Austria, there was never any kind of consensus to repent our colonial sins on the Balkan before the First World War, to really significantly and systematically address the anti-Semitism of the Austrian political elite. And it's just now undergoing in the last years. Yeah? But the real process which should lead to be allied with America, both economically in a free trade agreement and militarily in NATO, we have never done that effort. And we are still never confronted all these anti-Semitic and anti-American underlyings and currents of our main parties. And to this day, this is the reason why there is not a single politician ready to say it very simply. Yes, we are part of the West. Yes, we are with America. Yes, we should be with NATO. It's quite simple words. Yeah? Yes, Austria should join NATO. In the Austrian political context, this is today still seen as a very extreme thing to do. Of the same anti-Semites, of the same anti-capitalists, of the same anti-Europeans, which then say, no, yeah, we are European, yes, we are against anti-Semitism, yes, they all know that, they have learned it by heart. Yeah? But when you ask them, and consequently, are you now in favor of, for example, NATO membership? No, that's evil. Because why? Because of Iraq, because of American designs in Kosovo and in Ukraine, because of American they always, Vietnam, they always mention this one. And they always find one reason to be against America and against NATO. And you cannot argue then any more rational, because it's somewhere deep-seated undercurrents of the crocodile brain. And it's very so strong that you cannot really win this debate. Yeah? Because it's not a more a rational debate about security or about trade or about our cooperation. It's all irrational, and it's all deep-seated from the families of generations of hate against America, hate against Jews, and they are always connected in the world, because that's what Hitler told them, that's what Stalin told them, depending on and that's what they also have in a way in the Christian inheritance. So all different political leanings, when they are more influenced by Russian left-wing thinking and more susceptible towards Stalin's political teaching or Hitler's political teaching, which they will not confess anymore, of course. Yeah, but he was the greatest anti-American of all of them. He declared even war against America, Hitler I'm speaking, when he could, yeah, in December 41. Without any substantial need, yeah. But he hated America so much, that was his greatest honor, to be the enemy of America. And of course all these prejudices, which are also coming from this Christian antisemitism, from this hatred that America is more successful, this kind of younger brother being more successful syndrome maybe, but also that America has developed a different political system, a more successful political system, and a political system where in the teaching of and in the view of many Europeans, the Jews are equal, and then they get all this success, and then Wall Street, East Coast, and all this thinking, when you talk about them, and when you talk about they will not confess it so easily, and that's why I made it part of my NATO campaign, because it's the underlying hatred of America and of anti-Semitism and of this Western world, which they think there's powerful forces in the East Coast. And you think whenever they have free beers, they will tell you exactly, Günther, don't you see the situation? America, the Jews. This is the truth. And that's why Austria stays neutral. And it's very regrettable, because Austria was never systematically integrated in the Western world, like, for example, Western Germany was after 49, when the Republic was created. They joined NATO, and there was a really significant effort, because they were, of course, the core of the evil empire until 45. And Austria somehow was the first victim narrative, and then they could somehow, because also Fiegel and Raab were clearly very strong anti-Semites. Let's never forget, even when they are now the heroes of the neutrality and of the Second Republic, and I admire them as well, and they are really very good persons. But it is even, strangely enough, even Bruno Kreisky, who was a Jew himself, he was always very much anti-Zionist. And so this is all coming, to this, and he was of course very anti-American. He was of course very much against Israel, and this combination of efforts was always then leading that there should be this neutral third way, Tito-esque special way between the East and the West, to be the bridge, and to somehow fight against American imperialism. That's always very strong in the left, because they always thought that America wants to conquer the world. They never saw that the Soviet Union wanted to conquer the world, and it did it because of Austrian energy complicitly funding the Soviet undertaking in the 1970s with all this gas access and the energy access towards Germany and Austria. And this was one of the big reasons why in the 1970s the Soviet Union had so much money to really try to conquer the world. And they first conquered China in 49, and then they supplied Mao Zedong with all the weapons, and then they tried it in North Korea. They were stopped by MacArthur, and it was a settlement then. Stalin had to pay for it, but in the 1960s and 70s they made huge effort to conquer most of Africa and a significant part of Latin America and a significant parts of Asia. And then it was always American imperialism when the Americans tried to put a break to that expansion like in South Vietnam, which was a big tragedy that South Vietnam was lost and millions of people had to flee, and hundreds and thousands of people drowning in the Vietnam Sea trying to escape communist South Vietnam and the regime of revenge, which the North Vietnamese, backed by the Chinese and backed by the Soviet Union, they were basically then imposing on the South Vietnamese. But in Austria we see it as the important struggle against American imperialism, because America always wanted to take over the world. You know, there's of course some things in America which are really to be discussed, and there's some parts of American history, like in the Philippines and in Nicaragua, which I'm fully aware about, that this was also very wrong, and I condemn American imperialism as much as I condemn Austrian imperialism on the Balkans and in Eastern Europe, and as much as I condemn Soviet imperialism. But in the Cold War it was very much the Soviet Union on the offensive in the name of liberation of the people, suppressing so many hundreds and millions of people. And if you don't trust me on that one, if you think that the Soviet Union was a force of good and of liberation, of anti-imperialism, yes, then you will not like my videos, I'm convinced. But it is absolutely a force of suppression and of dictatorship and of brutality and of genocide, and they committed so much of it on their global crusade for equality based by the sword. And that is what the Soviet Union did in Africa and Asia, and created so much chaos. We have now 30 good years on the world since the end of the Soviet Union. Many people seem to regret it, and most of it Putin. He tries to come back and to impose his will on Ukraine. He will fail because of America. And then, of course, all these anti-Americans in Austria, they are having a heyday because they think, the American strategy in Ukraine is very bad. And you see that in their statements, you see it in many of the public utterings. And when you are an Austrian like me, which I actually love to be Austrian, it's a very nice country, very nice people, but ideologically they are really deeply confused, and I want to help to explain this to the world, and I want to help to change that. And there's already 100 good Austrians who signed for the Austrian People's Petition for Austrian to join NATO, because this debate is the only way to confront this deep-seated anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, and this hatred against Jews, and this kind of love of dictatorships, and like the Russian dictatorship today, and also this urge for a multipolar world, this effort against nuclear weapons, this treaty which there was signed, and this really deep-seated confusion of the Austrian ideological left and right, and unfortunately the center as well. I appeal to the Austrian politicians, please lead your country, our country, lead Austria into NATO, and let's confront our original sins, and let's try to build a country which is fully part of the West, and which is fully part of the free world inside NATO, and a worthy country into the European Union, because one day the question will be either EU or NATO, and what will you say then? Good. So I say yes to NATO, yes to the EU, yes to the Euro, yes to enlarged European Union and NATO, and for Austria to also secure the Balkans together with Bosnia and Kosovo, and to bring all these three countries next into the NATO. That's a very important mission, and that's what I'm calling for. Thanks a lot. More to come from Pax Europiana. Bye.